What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Today, we are going to be taking a look at my second round preview and predictions for the Metropolitan Division champion, I guess, in terms of the playoffs, the matchup between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Washington Capitals. So, for both of these teams, this is another series. It's in a different way from the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. These two teams are both going to be physical. This is going to be a physical series, and neither of these teams is going to shy away from it. The Washington Capitals, you have a lot of guys on this team not afraid to throw the gloves. You not have a lot of guys on, Carolina that are bigger body players that can definitely muck it up. But who is going to gain the edge in terms of if the game is played 5-on-5, which is, I would say, the better team on paper that's going to win the series 5-on-5, or who's the team that can benefit from maybe the scrappy, after the whistle, ticky-tack stuff that they can maybe sneak their way into winning this series? We're going to take a look at that today. So you could probably take a pretty good guess at if you've watched the first round of the series between both of these teams in their respective matchups. The Carolina Hurricanes took care of business against the New Jersey Devils. And, to be honest, we didn't really see the Carolina Hurricanes in that first round series. I got to be honest with you. There was nothing super inspiring in that series that really makes me think like, wow, the Florida Panthers or the Carolina Hurricanes are the team to beat. But they might be able to do that in this matchup, I think, more. And honestly, that's nothing to the fault of the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, the Devils were a very injured team going into the playoffs without Jack Hughes. Luke Hughes ends up getting injured. And it just seemed like going into that series, like it almost seemed certain that series was going to end in 4 or 5 games. You would be shocked if the Devils were going to drag that out to 6 before the puck drop of game 1 of that series. Carolina did what they had to do. They took care of business. But I think we're going to start to see more hype around the Carolina Hurricanes as this series goes along, because this is a more respectable matchup. The Washington Capitals, for a lot of this season, were the top team in the National Hockey League standings. As much as Carolina maybe struggled throughout the year, they got hot at the right time down the stretch. And Washington was almost the opposite. I think Washington came out of the gates storming. Really good season. The hype around Ovechkin has obviously drawn maybe distractions, but also a little bit of motivation. That's extra for this team. And the emergence of some of the players on the Capitals team that nobody expected. I mean, yeah, we did expect Connor McMichael to be pretty good, but he's been phenomenal for them. Alexei Protas with a 30-goal season. I don't think anybody saw that coming. And then you have the emergence of Logan Thompson in between the pipes, who was solid in the first round. And I expect, again, if he's back and healthy, which is going to be an important storyline of this series, that's going to play a factor in maybe how things finish up. So kind of looking at the first round for the Capitals, they also finished their series in 5 games over the Montreal Canadiens. And similar to the Carolina series, I don't think we saw the best version of the Capitals in that series. I think they just, not to say that like, they didn't play with their food, because both of these series ended in 5 games. I mean, that's pretty respectable up against their first round, opponent. They took care of business, but nobody saw the Devils or the Habs. I don't think that anybody really saw them as a true threat in the playoffs. So Carolina and Washington just did what we kind of expected them to do. So for Washington, I think the key to victory for them in this series is to get down and dirty and ugly with the Carolina Hurricanes and maybe get some of those guys off their game a little bit. Carolina, for all the things I don't like about Carolina, it's funny. I saw a thing the other day. It was like Islanders fans. It was like kind of like the 3 circles, and it was the Islanders and Rangers hate the Devils. The Rangers and the Devils both hate the Islanders. The Devils and the Islanders both hate the Rangers. And then what was the team in the middle logo that all 3 of the teams hated? It was the Carolina Hurricanes. You could probably throw Washington into this little circle scenario with how this series is probably going to end, because I think Carolina is going to hate the Washington Capitals, and I think the Washington Capitals and their fans are going to hate the Carolina Hurricanes at the end of this series. Rod Brind'Amour, listen, he's good with the refs. He knows what to say, and if there's things that are maybe going a little bit ticky-tacky, there might be a little bit of an influence from what Rod Brind'Amour says, and don't blame him. He's not the referee making the calls at the end of the day, but he knows the right things to say at the right time to the officials to maybe get some things to favor them in certain scenarios. So that's going to be interesting, because how does that match up with the way that, Washington likes to play, with guys that maybe you don't know about. Now, obviously, we know about Wilson. Wilson likes to get things going a little bit, ruffle the feathers. Nick Dowd, not afraid to do that either. Dylan McElrath on the back end, also not afraid to do that. And then you have the emergence of Ryan Leonard, who's really developed that role with the Washington Capitals, and he's definitely taken his own licks through the end of the regular season and into the postseason against the Habs. He's definitely taken some hits and taken a little bit of adversity from Caps fans for maybe being a distraction in his own right. Maybe laying a hit and maybe causing some controversy in a game that maybe the Habs really, kind of gained momentum from and kind of distracted the Capitals. Could that happen in this series against Carolina, who is one of those teams that is one of the more, they get more power plays than most teams around the league. And a lot of that is because of their puck possession, right? When you have the puck a lot, teams are chasing you around. Then you see tripping penalties. You see, penalties that tend to lead from maybe being tired, being on the ice too long, not having possession. Like I said, Carolina gets a lot of power plays. So how does Washington kind of combat that, right? The way that Carolina plays with the puck possession, Carolina is a tough team to play against because they do things in a way where once they get a 1 or 2-0 lead, it is very hard to come back in a game against the Hurricanes. There are very few games where Carolina has the lead and gives it up, like we saw in the first round with teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Panthers, or most recently, a game against the Winnipeg Jets with the St. Louis Blues, where the Blues had a 2-goal lead with 3 minutes left. That's not really, Carolina doesn't have that happen to them. Now, I will say, that doesn't mean that it won't happen, but if you look at recent history, Carolina does not do that. And I may have jinxed them here, but I just think the way Rod Brind'Amour plays, the way this team is, they just don't give you much ice, and they suffocate the life out of you. And I think if Carolina is able to get leads early on in these games, they're able to keep things 5-on-5 most of the way. Washington's going to try and distract them. They're going to try and throw them off their game. I could definitely see that being something here. With that said, Carolina does not have home ice advantage here. Washington is the favored team. So everyone's saying that, Carolina on paper has the better team and they should be able to benefit from more 5-on-5 play. I think Carolina can also, again, use the advantage of, despite not having home ice advantage, I think on paper, if you look at these two teams, Carolina might have the better team here. So Washington, it's interesting because if Ovechkin gets shut down, if Carolina's assignment is to shut down Ovechkin, who else is going to score? Are we going to see the depth goals from guys like Nick Dowd? And we're going to see maybe a goal from the back end that you didn't expect. Those are the things where Carolina can use that as kind of a way of using their depth against the Capitals, where the Capitals' depth is going to be tested in a different way than what they were against the Montreal Canadiens. And, honestly, both of these teams are very good teams. I honestly think the team in the Atlantic will end up going to the Stanley Cup final. So I don't really think this series matters as much. And that sucks to say because I'm from New York. I'm from the Metropolitan Division. I'd love to see one of these teams go all the way to the Cup final. But as of the way things looked in the first round, again, there's a lot of hockey to be played. But these two teams, we're going to see more of a showcasing of these teams in this series because I think they're more well matched up against each other than what they faced in the first round. So maybe that will change by the end of this series. But with that said, I like what I've seen from both teams. I want to see more, and I think we're going to see it more so from the Carolina Hurricanes. And the fact that Carolina does not have home ice advantage, I think the key for them is if they can steal a game in Washington, and let's say Washington wins one of the games in Carolina, I think it'll come down to a situation where Carolina has a 3-2 series lead, and I think they're able to win this series at home in Game 6 at Lenovo Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have the Carolina Hurricanes going on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like I said, I love the Washington Capitals. I just watched the Hershey Bears play in their second-round series against the Phantoms. Unfortunately, did not go the way that Caps fans and Bears fans would have hoped. But, I think these two teams, the Capitals are more in a transition phase than Carolina. Carolina has put all their marbles into the basket for this season. They have a lot of players there that just fit the way their system is. Guys like Taylor Hall, Jordan Mortnook, despite not having Natchez anymore, the back end also looks really solid. And, we haven't seen Nikolaishyn yet, but maybe that's something we get to see maybe at some point this series. Again, a lot of contract negotiations going on there. We'll see what happens with that. But like I said, Jacob Slavin, he did it in the first round. Like I said, I think we're going to see more of Jacob Slavin in the second round and people talking about him more. Freddie Anderson just got his contract extension. Congratulations to him. His contract, he'll be playing his first game with that new contract that's going to be extended into next season on game 1. So that's really exciting. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate the support on the channel as always. Thank you so much for watching, and leave your predictions down below. Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.